Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and welcome to MFSN. I don't know why I
It's a
can't talk
mouthful.
today,
It's a
Kasey.
mouthful.
I'm here with my co-host Kasey, Live to the Bone, Shinefold. We're here to talk sports. We'll talk baseball. We'll talk basketball. We'll talk hockey. Anything you guys want to talk about, we'll talk about. But we're going to give our waiver wire pickups that we should pick up this week. Players that I've noticed, Kasey, that are playing really well and are starting and they're pitching well off their injuries. And they're available probably in a lot of your leagues. So I want to talk about that. Let's talk about the big game last night. UConn national champions. Congratulations, UConn Huskies. What do you think?
Yeah, they looked pretty darn good, man. I mean, it was an ugly game. It wasn't the most fun game to watch, but hats off to UConn. They kind of steamrolled everybody the whole way through. They took a lot of the excitement or unknown out of this March Madness.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see a new team to win the national championship. I mean, UConn was so good back years ago, but it's nice to see a Big East team come out, and it's not an ACC team. It's not a Big Ten team or anything. It's an AC. It's a Big East team, and I think it was nice to see a four seed actually come out and win against San
Yeah,
Diego State, who wasn't really that high either. I think they were a five seed. But I mean, it was just great to see. I wouldn't say underdog team beginning of the year. I guess they were. I want to
well, they were a
say they were
4 seed, so
they were forced. But beginning of the year, I think they were 25-1 to win the national championship. I want to say, which is pretty good odds.
yeah,
Um, I mean, the only way I would bet that is if I went to school there, and obviously I did not go to school in UConn. You know where I went to school. But again, great tournament. Congratulations, NCAA. I thought it was the best tournament we've had in years. I just thought it was exciting. I love how there's no number one seeds in the Final Four. That was the best, and I'm excited. I mean, I like college basketball now. I love I love how the players are just playing their hearts out, and it's a fun to watch. I even watched Kasey. I don't know if you watched it. I watched the girls' national championship and the Final Four, and
yeah,
I love watching that too. I mean, I
yeah.
was rooting for
I
Iowa. I
actually
was rooting for
enjoyed that as
LSU.
much
I
as
was
anything.
excited.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it was
it
as
was
much fun to reach. That was as much fun to watch as the men's.
yeah. I mean, again, but both teams great. I mean, just great, and it's nice to see a lot of those girls stay the whole 4 years. They don't leave early, which is nice to see too. But most of those girls actually stay the whole 4 years, and why not? They make probably more money playing in college than they
Their
do in
NIL deals, yeah.
than they do playing the WNBA. So might as well stay in school, enjoy yourself, and try to win a national championship. I get it. So, Case, first week of baseball, I want to hear your thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, for me, I just love baseball, so it was exciting to watch. The Yankees got off to a pretty good start. They have one loss, so I enjoyed watching most of those games except that one. Bullpens. My takeaway from fantasy is that, and we talk about it all during preseason. Like, you can't predict bullpen success except for 3 or 4 teams. And how many teams where their bullpens were just atrocious this weekend? I mean, the Phillies haven't won a game. Kimbrel and Sir Anthony Dominguez have like 8 or 9 or higher ERAs right now. You got new closers coming in. You got Daniel Bard going for anxiety to the IL. Obviously,
Yeah, I saw Casey. I saw that. I know you're a trained doctor when it comes to that stuff. What are your thoughts on that? I wanted to
I
I wanted
mean,
to ask your professional
look,
opinion first.
my heart goes out to him. I mean, this is a guy who missed 7 years, because he got the equivalent of the yips for a putter as a pitcher. He just couldn't find the strike zone. So he's been prone to kind of performance anxiety. When the pressure gets on, he can lose his nerve sometimes. And like, once you get that frame of reference or that thought pattern in your head, it becomes really difficult to change it. So good for him for taking a step back to address that. The struggle is real. I hope he gets the help he needs and he can come back, because we need examples of that. People who are open about their mental health struggles, are open about the work they did to work through it, and then come back and be a success. So, um, I am certainly rooting for him. Obviously, from a fantasy perspective, you got to pick up Pierce Johnson if you're a Daniel Bard guy. He's clearly one of the top pickups this week, although he might even be over 60% owned now. I'm not sure, because
I mean, Pierce Bronson, he wasn't my favorite James Bond, just so you know. But
No, he
it
wasn't.
wasn't even in the top 5. But when it comes to pitching, he looked pretty good this year so far. Pierce Johnson, we're talking about. And the pitcher we're talking about is Daniel Bard, just in case if you didn't hear us, what we were talking about. And he pitches for the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just I had Bard in a bunch of my leagues. I mean, that's the crazy thing, because I thought he was one of the few relievers that was safe from not losing his job, because he really didn't have anybody else. And of course, my theory is thrown out the window. But
he might get it back if he works through.
Yeah, I mean, is there a timetable when it comes to this mental problem?
No, it's anxiety affects everybody differently. Some people can push through it. Some people, a certain level of anxiety is healthy. Obviously, like if you didn't having some anxiety about opening day or a relief appearance, it increases your focus. It increases your energy level. To a certain point, it gets you kind of amped up and ready to go. But when it reaches that level where it then starts to kind of hamper or hinder, I'm betting he's going to be out at least several weeks, but I'm not sure. Everybody's different. Some clients, some patients can be in therapy for months. Others can work through it pretty quickly. For others, it's a lifelong problem. We'll see. I mean, the guy missed 7 years, so there's a track record for him.
I read that,
of once it hits him hard. So I'm hoping, because he can rely on the resiliency and strength and coping skills he developed his first time, that he can get through it a lot quicker this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping, I don't want to say it, but I'm hoping some modern medicine can help him. I'm hoping I'm sure he's seeing a therapist every day, I imagine.
I would hope. Yep.
I would hope. I mean, I don't think there's any shortcuts to this.
I'm sure the Rockies organization is helping him in any way they can. I know they have, most major sports programs have psychologists and counselors on staff.
Yeah,
so
of course,
I'm glad he has access to those services.
So first week of baseball, I know your Yankees are playing good ball. My Reds are playing okay. And they're scoring runs too, which I love, which we'll get into. But let's talk about your favorite pickups, players that you want to pick up that are, let's say, under 60%. They could be a little over if you want, doesn't matter. You just don't know what league has who's available in what league. So I'm not doing position by position. I'm just doing okay, you have players on your bench that you don't care about, and you want to pick up some players on your team right now because next week they're not going to be available. I'll give you my list. I'll give you my top list. Let me hear some of your top pickups.
Well, I think Bryce Terang right now, the way he's playing in Milwaukee.
Let's talk about Bryce real quick. He plays for Milwaukee. He's playing second base. He's down in Yahoo as a shortstop.
Yeah, but he'll qualify within another game or two at second base also. And
I agree. I mean, tell us a little about him. I mean, he's a speedster.
He's actually a former first-round pick and was a top 100 prospect a few years ago. But he's one of those ones who is just a little slower to develop. Now, saying that, I think he's 24 years old. So when we say slow to develop, he's still a young player. He's got some pop. He's got good ball to bat skills, and he's got a lot of speed. And the Brewers need help at the top of the lineup to get on base. They're not scoring a lot of runs. And so his value is huge. And second base is so shallow that I think Bryce Terang has to be one of your top 2 or 3 pickups this week, given his position.
I agree. In case I looked him up, it's I think he's available in almost 80% of the leagues. I mean, but again, he's not a second baseman. So if you go to the second base category and you try to pick him up, you're not going to see him. You have to go to shortstop. And he's in my top 10 pickups. Another person I like a lot is Joey Gallo. We talked about him at the beginning of the season.
I just can't trust that guy.
Let me just explain. He's hitting 308. He has 2 home runs, and he's been getting on base a lot. I know you don't trust him, but you know what? If you have room on your team and you need RBIs and let's say even home runs, and he might hurt you in batting average, which stats show he will. But again, he may not be available next week just because he's really hitting the ball hard right now.
Yeah.
I know you don't trust him. I get it. But again, he qualifies as an outfielder this year. Before I think it was utility, but now as an outfielder, again, it's not a bad pickup. I just believe that he'll have 30 home runs and 100 RBIs this year. I hope he hits 260. I don't think he will. Kasey, who else do you like?
Um, I I'll name a pitcher here. I think
That's okay.
um, I'm going to go with a relief pitcher. I think Gregory Soto at this point is the guy to own in that Phillies bullpen. He's only owned in 34% of Yahoo leagues when last I checked. He's probably going to be, with the way Kimbrel and Dominguez are pitching, it'll be between he and Jose Alvarado. They like to use Alvarado from when I watch the Phillies in more of that fireman role, where whatever inning they're in a jam, they put him in to get him out of the jam. And so I think Soto could take over the closing job pretty easily in Philadelphia. So I like Gregory Soto, especially if you're a Daniel Bard owner and you didn't get Pierce Johnson. Here's a potential closer that can get you 17 to 20 saves probably the rest of the way.
And that's good. And also another, to stay on the topic of relief pitchers, I think it's his job because he has a save and he gave up no runs already. So, I mean, I don't think maybe it's his job, but you never know with the Texas Rangers. I like Will Smith. He's been around for a while.
Yep.
You know, and he's in the record book. He pitched to actually a guy named Will Smith for the Dodgers, which has never been done in playoff baseball. But I think Will Smith's going to keep that job. And I think the Rangers should win over 80 games this year. I think they'll be a pretty good team this year. I like them a lot. I don't think they're better than Seattle. I don't think they're better than Houston, but I think they'll do okay in the American League. But I like Will Smith as the reliever. Another reliever I like is Andrew Chafin of the Diamondbacks. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen this guy. He looks mean. I mean, this guy, he has the mullet. He has the facial hair. I mean, he throws really hard, and you know, he has a save, and so far no runs given up. And you know, this guy is like, reminds me of like the Al Haboski, like that. He's that like crazy. But he throws really hard. I don't know how many wins the Diamondbacks will get this year. I don't know how many save opportunities he'll get, but you know, I think he'll keep that job. And if you need a reliever, I think he's not a bad pickup. Who else do you got, Kasey?
As a starter, I'm going to name a Tampa Bay Ray, Drew Rasmussen. Not somebody who's well owned, and not somebody who's well known. And I don't think he's a long-term pickup, although he finished as inside the top 50 last year for starting pitchers. So if you're in a 12-team league, you know, he's rosterable for all the season. But this week in particular, he has 2 starts, and they'll be against the Nationals and the Athletics. So he's going against 2 of the weakest offenses. And that's something from a strategy perspective you have to consider when you're looking at pitchers. Like German Marquez pitched brilliantly against San Diego and historically has been a really strong pitcher against when he's on the road. But when he's at home, the Coors Field effect kills him, and the lack of a shift is going to make it even worse for him. So you have to consider where and when to start certain pitchers. Like, is Rasmussen somebody I would go out and put out against Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton and the Yankees, or Guerrero Jr. and the Blue Jays? No. But if you're getting matchups against Oakland and Washington, heck, I'm going to throw him out there every time.
I like it. I like that pickup. Somebody else who gets no respect, had a good year last year, pitched very well. I thought, you know, I think he was an all-star. Maybe he wasn't, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he started on Sunday Night Baseball against the Phillies, is Martin Perez for the Texas Rangers. He actually, his ERA, I know he only pitched one game. His ERA is 1.59 when he had 7 Ks his first start. But he's somebody that always pitches well, especially the past couple of years, and he gets no respect in fantasy. I mean, I drafted him like in the late rounds, and he's available in a lot of leagues still. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I like Martin Perez. I think he's proven himself. He's not one of these like flash in the pan type guys. And he's a strikeout guy too. I just don't know why he just can't get any respect. But if you have room, you know, if you have room in your team and you want to drop one of your pitchers that didn't pitch well, like Michael Kopech for me didn't pitch well, and I dropped him in every league already just because he had a horrible spring. That's why I did it. Horrible spring, horrible first start. I don't want him on my team. You're gone. I mean, sorry, Case.
No. I mean, I think that's one of the things from a strategy perspective that becomes important is how do you handle your roster the first couple weeks of the season? When do you react, and when do you sit back and give them a second chance? Like, you named Kopech. Kopech is either brilliant or terrible. He has never been consistent. He's struggled with injuries. He's on a bad run right now, and I don't think he's somebody you can roster. Whereas if you had, I think you also have Alek Manoah, don't you?
Alek Manoah,
Manoah had a really bad start, his first start, but
he pitched well the first couple innings and he got rocked. You're 100% right.
but
Yes.
you trust Alek Manoah because you know the stuff is there. You've seen the track record, what
Yes.
he did all last year. So if somebody like that has a bad start, nobody's going to react to that. Now, if he has 2 or 3 bad starts, that's when a smart owner like Ross or I, if we don't own him, will reach out to that manager because that manager is really frustrated and say, "Hey, do you want my hot starting pitcher or shortstop or whatever for your underperforming pitcher? Because I know in the long run I'm going to win that trade." That's something you look for.
And I'm gonna name somebody. I know you talked about him. You've been following this guy ever since he was in the minors. Is Mackenzie Gore of the Washington
Yep.
Nationals? He had a really good first start for the Nationals. He had 6 Ks and his ERA is 1.69. I know it's only one game, but I mean, remember all the hype when he pitched for the Padres? Remember all the hype that was going on with him? I mean, do you think is that somebody you would roster, or he hasn't?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He looks like he worked out his mechanics. I watched him pitch in spring training. Actually, his last spring training game was in DC against the Yankees. It was like their last game. So I got a chance to see him pitch. He throws it. It doesn't look like he's working hard when he's out there throwing 96, 97 miles an hour with that fastball. And he's got a pretty good slider. And look, you don't get ranked as the number 1 left-handed pitcher in the minors by almost every scout, universally by all these pros, unless you really have the stuff. He lost his mechanics during the COVID kind of craze when he was shut down, and there was no minor leagues. But the cat can pitch, and and the beauty of him is he's in a organization now that is able to give him a long leash, right? They're able to let him get through the growing pains. And so what I would probably do is stash him on the end of my bench. And then once he's had 1 or 2 or 2 or 3 good starts in a row, then I'd start integrating him into the lineup.
Got it. Well, and then a couple other guys I like, starting pitchers. For some reason, we're doing pitchers first. Mike Hillinger of the White Sox. He had a great first start. He got the win. He had 8 Ks, didn't give up any runs. He looked really good and strong. Just keep him on your watch list, or if you have room, pick him up. And another guy, I know he's a Cub, but he looked great. I watched him pitch, and I loved him. And I think I picked him up in a few leagues. Is Justin Steele. He's another guy that had 8 strikeouts and gave up no runs and got the win. And he looked really good too. I mean, those are a couple of guys. If you have room, great. If you don't, just keep an eye, put a little tag on them. But again, these are guys that I feel they're going to do really well the whole season, and they're available. It's like some guys are like under 10% owned, so you'll be able to pick some of these guys up. Anybody else you like pitching wise, Kasey?
Pitching wise, I mentioned Herman Marquez. He's somebody I might pick up and look to play when he's on the road because his numbers on the road are insane. I like Tyler McGill in New York. He had a good
start.
He's a good pitcher. I mean, in his first 6 starts last year, he had a 2.43 ERA, a 0.9 WHIP, and over a strikeout per inning before he kind of got injured and imploded a little bit the rest of the season. He had strong peripherals all throughout the year too, and so he's getting the chance with Verlander being hurt. If he pitches really well, I could see the Mets going to a 6-man rotation to save the shoulders and arms of their older guys in Scherzer and Verlander, and to keep Kodai Senga healthy longer too. So he's somebody I would look at.
I like that. And let's talk about hitters. We always talk about how catchers, it's not a deep position. Well, I have a guy that qualifies as a catcher. He plays catcher once in a while, but he's also does DH a lot. He pulled DH a lot this year.
I know who you're talking about.
Is Mitch Garver. Yep. And Garver's hitting 429, and he's also has 6 RBIs already this year. He's having an outstanding year right now, and he's hitting the ball really hard. I mean, he's hitting shots. And again, when it gets hot in Texas, that ball goes further. Again, he qualifies as catcher, Kasey. What do you think? Would you pick him up on your team?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would probably pick him up and start him over a lot of other catchers right now. I mean, you're not going to start him over Sal Perez or Will Smith or even Adley Rutschman, JT Realmuto. But after that, I'm like, who are you really ranking above this guy? Maybe Dalton Varsho because he gets you some speed there. But Mitch Garver's putting up better numbers than everybody else. So yeah, I would pick him up. And even if I had one of those top 4 guys I mentioned and I could get him on the cheap, I'd probably pick him up too, because there's going to be days where your players get rest, and to be able to put that guy in as your second option is a luxury.
Now we talk about this guy every year because he's always on the waiver wire. He's always bouncing around different teams. And his brother plays for Golden State, and he goes to the games when he's not playing. He'll go to his games in Dodger Stadium, and we'll see him in the background cheering for his brother. Is Tracy Thompson, and Trace, and I think he had a 3 home run game last week.
3 home runs, 8 RBIs.
8 RBIs. He's hitting 333 for the year. I mean, the Dodgers will play him when he's hot. Again, they have a little crowded outfield, but he'll probably get some starts throughout the season. Is this some guy you're focused on, or is this somebody that you'll pass
I don't
on?
think so. I'm going to pass on him, not because, I don't like the guy. I think he's a platoon player who's going to get most of the starts against lefties. And that's just not a recipe for fantasy relevance when you're the lefty hitting specialist. The actual Dodger outfielder who I would be targeting is James Outman, the rookie that nobody's really talking about, the lefty who would get the right side of the platoon. Great spring, batted almost 300, slugged almost 1,000, hit 3 home runs in the preseason, and came out last year against righties, batted 324, hit right-handers. This is a guy who is a good base runner as well. I could see him, even if he's playing 400, 450 at bats, the way steals are nowadays. If you watched any baseball this weekend, it felt like you just run wild with the new base running rules, that he could get you 15 home runs and 20 stolen bases, even as a platoon player. And so he would be the Dodger outfielder.
That's a Dodger you like. For. And it's funny. I live in LA, and this guy gets no press. No one talks about him on the news. No one talks about him on any of these sports talk shows. His name is never mentioned. And I agree with you. I think he's a rising star, and I think he'll have a really good season for the Dodgers. And again, he's in the middle of that lineup, and he can hit. I mean, he's a really good hitter. That's a good pickup. Somebody else I'll mention because I'm a Red fan, Jason Vosler. He's a third baseman, but he also plays first. He's hitting 364 already, and he has 6 RBIs. He's been killing the ball. I mean, he was a big part of the Reds' win last night. He had a 2-run home run to help win the game. I mean, again, we talked about the youth movement in Cincinnati because they don't have any money, basically, so they start all buddy that's league minimum guys. But I mean, is this somebody that you're focused on, or somebody that you like that you think will have a good year?
I would certainly give him a long look. Third base is so thin, and so anybody who's doing anything of fantasy relevance at third base, unless you again own one of those top few options, has to be a consideration. And again, like I said with Mackenzie Gore, the same thing applies. They're not just going to bench him because he's not playing well. The Reds are in a position where they're trying to develop these players, unfortunately, at the major league level. And most rookies, I mean, if you remember Austin Riley's rookie season, he came up and he hit like 10 home runs in his first 3 weeks and then struck out 60% of the time. The rest of the season.
They figured him out. They said, throw him the changeup or throw him the curveball. He can't hit it.
And then they embarrassed him, but he went back to what they gave him the rope to learn. He went back to work.
Yep.
And now he might be the best hard-hitting third baseman in baseball. And I'm not saying this guy is going to be Austin Riley, but I'm saying Cincinnati will give him a chance. They won't bench him just because he's slumping here and there.
No, they're not going to bench him. Talking about third basemen that came out hot, Yoan Moncada of the White Sox.
Moncada's been great, and he's not
429, 2 home runs so far this year. The White Sox played Houston the first series, and they took the series from the world champions. The White Sox, last year I predicted them to win the World Series. I was wrong. So was Dr. Dan Ratner. So He also said that team. But the White Sox are a team that has all the talent. They really do. They just have to put everything together. But again, I mean, Makata at third base. I mean, is that somebody you're looking at if you're a little thin on third base?
Oh yeah, and he's somebody I considered picking up, even though I wasn't thin on third base, just because you never know when you're going to need that player, right? He can play in the
Yeah.
utility spot. And this is the guy who the White Sox were willing to trade Chris Sale for. I remember when the Yankees and the Red Sox were kind of in the bidding war to get this kid as a 16-year-old. Like they had him pegged, like the talent is there. He struggled with injuries. He hasn't run as much as they thought they have, but maybe he's a late bloomer. He's what, 27 now, 20, 28 maybe.
27, right? Yeah. I
And
mean,
there you've seen guys like Aaron Judge, for crying out loud. Like he didn't really blossom until he was almost 27. And so some players just get it late. This is a guy who we know has the pedigree and the talent. And if he's just finally putting it all together, now's the time to get in on him because he can help you win a league.
I mean, it's been an interesting first week. I think with the rule changes, I think we're seeing a lot more offense, Kasey. I think pitchers don't have time to hesitate. And
Sunday night baseball is 7. I'm on the East Coast, so it's like a 7:10 first pitch. And I had stuff to do, and I was like, "Oh, I'll watch the last few innings." And so I turned it on at 9:15, and the game's over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like torn on this just because in LA, the price to go to a Dodger game or even an Angel game is very expensive.
Yeah, that's going to be the
park.
issue.
It's expensive park, and you bring your kids to a baseball game, and you pay all that money, and you're sitting in traffic for an hour. I mean, literally, you're sitting in traffic to get to the game from my house. It's an hour to get home. It's an hour, so that's 2 hours of driving right there. And you go to the game, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I mean, you spent more time in the car than you did watching the game.
And that's going to be an interesting thing.
I mean,
they're going to have to lower prices, but I mean, really, so you would feel better about 3.5 hours at the game because even though an hour of it is just
I'm not
time,
just being honest. I'm torn with you. If anybody else wants to interject that's watching,
it's an interesting conversation. I think what they might start doing would be allowing tickets in earlier to watch batting practice and to watch the teams warm up and maybe get more chances for autographs or interactions with the players when they're down on the field warming up. I would think
they stopped drinking the 7th. You can't buy beer after the 7th inning.
That's going to be, and I was having that discussion with somebody the other day, the interesting effect on the vendors when all of a sudden, like you don't have 3 hours of selling
there you go
beer,
hot dogs, peanuts,
whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
All of a sudden, like you're losing 45 minutes of potential customers. How much income are they going to lose? Because let's be honest. I mean, a heavy drinker, even if you're planning on drinking beer the whole game, like where you could get 3 or 4 beers in you can't get but 2 before last call or before everything's closed. And so there could be some hits.
I agree. And even like selling merchandise, all that stuff, all the stuff that the ball teams do that they depend on to make money.
Which I think they could increase if they allowed people in the park earlier. Open those vendors early.
I mean, I've been to some ballparks where they do let people in early. A lot of people don't like to watch batting practice. I've been to Riverfront. I've been to Riverfront, but not recently because it's not there. I've been to Great American Ballpark. And what they do there is they let you in early, and the players, this is during COVID, the players were actually like signing autographs for you. And half the people were even masks up. They didn't care. They just wanted the fan interaction. And some teams, especially in the smaller market, it's a time when people get autographs. The players are very social, and they like to talk to their fans before the game. After the game, not really. They like to go home and take a shower. I get it. But I mean, it's certain teams, they do let people in. I mean, I know that at Dodger games, if you're a season ticket holder or if you have a certain like level of being a Dodger fan, they let you in early to catch batting practice for fly balls.
And so I think if they start incorporating maybe some way for you to interact with the players when they're on the field, like maybe the players come over and sign the kids' autographs or whatever, that would make it more worthwhile for a family. Like I have two kids. If I'm now the Orioles, God bless, like the Orioles people outside of the Baltimore area, like lament the Orioles, I think, sometimes because they've been kind of perennial bottom dwellers in the East. Now they're more competitive this year, and it looks like it's a bright future. But the one thing the Orioles have always done really well is have a really nice ballpark and keep the cost of their tickets down, so that families like mine, when the kids were young, we could go and not have to spend $400 just for tickets to sit in bad seats, and then another $200 on food. But like for me, if I could take my son down, who's a baseball fan, and he knew that at least 2 or 3 players were going to be along the right field wall 2 hours before the game, he's going to want to get there early and hang out, even if there's no baseball to watch. He's going to want
Remember, the vendors don't open until like a half hour before games.
But they could also then give the vendors the opportunity to open early.
Yeah. I mean, it's just they don't want to pay the people getting there. It's a whole thing. But again, I mean, there's more offense this year. I feel there's more runs this year.
Well, the steals are up crazy.
Steals are up. The run production's up.
People talked about the shift, and I was reading a statistic. I think the batting average on balls in play, which is BABIP, is a stat that measures how often a batted ball that's in play falls for a hit as opposed to an out. Last year, it was in the 270s as the league average. The first 5 games of the season, it was up over 305, I think. And so that's showing that the elimination of the shift is also creating the opportunity for more extended innings where there's multiple hits strung together. So yeah, it's getting more fun to watch. It's got to be frustrating to be a pitcher. All of a sudden, you can only throw over 2 times. You have only like 18 seconds or 20 seconds to get your pitch off. You can't put the defense always in the best position to make an out. They're making it really challenging for pitchers.
Yeah, again, I think it's helping the game. I think people, instead of spending like 3.5 hours watching a game on TV, you spend less than 3 hours. At least it's something.
Yeah.
So let's talk. Coming up the next couple weeks, we got the NFL draft. We have no idea where Aaron Rodgers is going. I mean, is it the Jets? I mean, that's the only team I think that makes sense for him. I don't think anybody else is even making a bid for him.
And that's certainly who he wanted.
And then Derrick Henry, the running back, I read an article where he's going to go to Dallas. I mean, which is huge. Can you imagine him as a Cowboy? Yeah, this year, Kasey.
His free agent year is next year, so they'd have to trade him.
If you read, the Tennessee Titans want to trade him. He's on the block to be traded. Okay.
I think Dallas would be stupid to trade for him, but.
Well, again, as you know, Jerry Jones loves having a big running back, and Emmitt Smith. Zeke Elliott is not going to be there next year.
Derrick Henry's not going to come cheap, right?
I'm just throwing something out there
just
make your mind spin.
Tony Pollard. I don't think. I mean, I would be. It would be a perfect fit for Derrick Henry. It would crush any dynasty or keeper league managers who own Tony Pollard, because all of a sudden he'll never get a touchdown carry again. But hey, I'm interested. I also heard that the Arizona Cardinals are considering releasing DeAndre Hopkins.
I read that yesterday.
Showing trade interest. And so as a Giants fan, I would be really excited because the Giants could use a wide receiver. They could draft one, but then bring Hopkins in, and Hopkins can kind of show the ropes to whoever they draft and give Daniel Jones a viable target.
Yeah, I think Hopkins is going to be a hot commodity, just like Rodgers will be, obviously. And then, I don't know what's going on with Lamar Jackson.
He's going to be in Baltimore.
I hope you're right.
The only other team I can see him going to would be
Kasey. I have no idea what's going on. I still don't understand why he doesn't hire an agent. I mean, the agent fee, just so everybody knows, is between 3 or 5%. It's totally worth it to hire an agent that's part of that boys club that knows the owners, that can get the most for your dollar instead of doing it yourself with your mom. I get it, but it's not the time or place to do stuff on your own. It's time to bring in a real agent to do the job. But again, it's his decision. I can't control it, but the draft is in 3 weeks. I think we'll see a lot of trades, Kasey. I think we'll see a lot of movement on a lot of rosters on draft day. It should be fun. It should be interesting. We'll talk about it more when we get closer.
Yeah.
But I'm Ross the Boss. That's Kasey, Vlad to the Bone Shinefold. We love talking baseball and sports with you. We got the NBA playoffs start next week. We got a lot of other stuff going on. Any questions you guys have, don't be afraid to write us. And we'll see you guys next
Thursday.
week. And next week. And Thursday.
Yeah, every Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Thursdays, 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. Have a good night, everybody.